You've described Zero Land's shutdown as a collapse of mercenary capital.
I can think of a lot of reasons as to why this is happening. One is just like you can see a lot of other projects that have shut down recently, some of them that have been in the space for quite some time.
Did you think this outcome was predictable, say 5 years ago, 3 years ago?
There was definitely a point 3-4 years ago where, when all these L2s were spinning up and the narrative was, Ethereum at one point will support millions of Layer-2s. Maybe you don't need that many L2s, especially right now, and maybe we should focus on scaling the base chain, scaling Ethereum.
What do you think is the biggest mistake DeFi founders are making at the moment?
The biggest mistake?
So I just kind of wanted to start off. You've described Zero Land's shutdown as a collapse of mercenary capital, the mercenary capital model. What specifically do you think made that model unsustainable?
Yeah, well, I think it's, not necessarily specific to Zero Land. I think they're just one example of some of the consolidation that we're seeing in the DeFi space right now. I think if you look around, you can see a lot of other projects that have shut down recently, some of them that have been in the space for quite some time, who I've known for a very long time. And it's, maybe not shocking, but it's just really interesting to see teams and projects that you've worked with for such a long time start to close their doors. Like Loopring is kind of consolidating a lot of their products. I know that Slingshot Crypto, I've worked with Clint for a very long time. Nifty Gateway was one that was a little bit of a shocker to a lot of people. And so, I can think of a lot of reasons as to why this is happening. One is just like market conditions and the much more of a bigger focus towards AI. Another one is just natural consolidation of a market that's going through different cycles and maturity phases. But then a lot of it is some of the things that we talk about a lot in the space, like fragmented liquidity throughout Layer-2s and the mercenary capital, which is kind of what I want to talk about here. And for those unfamiliar, when we talk about mercenary capital in the DeFi space, that's just users or institutions with assets that simply just go to the highest yield, which all of this sounds obvious, right? But the idea in the crypto space was like, okay, if we want to drive growth, we should take our token and give it to people who are using our protocol, right? And we call that emissions-based APY boosts, essentially. So if you have a lending and borrowing protocol, you want users to deposit assets so that those assets are then available for people to borrow, and that kind of kickstarts the flywheel of your protocol. A good way to do that is to give away free tokens of your project to boost that APY, and that drives a lot of assets into your liquidity pools on your DeFi protocol. You can't do that forever as a DeFi protocol. There comes a time where the dilution of your asset starts to outweigh the benefits of using it to drive that growth. And then, so you start to pull back these emissions. And when that starts to happen, the people who are putting their capital there, not just for the product market, not for the product market fit of the protocol they're using, but just to obtain those bonus boosted rewards, they're going to leave. It just makes sense. It's normal economics, supply and demand. And, I think another thing we've seen, and I think we've seen this with other lending and borrowing protocols, is if you're spreading your operations too thin across various Layer-2s or blockchains, there's obviously operational overhead that you have to manage, but also liquidity it's too thin. And you really need deep liquidity in a DeFi protocol for it to operate efficiently and in a manner in which users want to continue to use it repeatedly. Katana has a way in which we are addressing a lot of the things that I've talked about here, but I'll leave it here to see if you have a follow-up or just to make sure I answered your question in the way that you wanted me to.
No, definitely. So how many Layer-2s do you think can realistically sustain meaningful ecosystems? Is there a number in your head or
It's a good question. I don't think there's really a specific number necessarily. So I worked at Polygon Labs for about 4 years. And then prior to that, I was in traditional banking for about 13 years. And now I'm at Katana. But this kind of goes in a little bit to how the story of how Katana was born. And so I'll talk about that a little bit. But while I was on the DeFi team at Polygon, we started to notice this trend of verticalization of DeFi or of layer 2s. So, instead of just general purpose layer 2s, where you're just very open and anyone deploy anything and we'll fund any project and give grants to any project that wants to build, we started to see, payments focused L2s or RWA focused and gaming and NFT focused layer 2s. And I think there's a lot of benefit that can be realized in that type of just focus and concentration in optimizing your operations, your grants programs, and your architecture for a specific just subset of vertical. And yeah, so we started to see DeFi focused layer 2s pop up in the form of, like Sonic, Barachain, things of that. Hyperliquid is a great example as well. And so we really took a step back and said, what do we really want to see in a DeFi focused layer 2? Because Polygon is another, at the time, was a general purpose layer 2 that had a lot of good DeFi activity, but it also had gaming and NFT and payments and DePIN, and it had everything. Now Polygon is very much just focused on payments, and I think we're seeing incredible results on that side. But when we took a step back and said, okay, from a DeFi standpoint, I would like to have high yield that's sustainable, which makes sense, right? And I would like to have deep liquidity as well, so that I can execute the transactions I want to do within DeFi efficiently. And so what we did, we took a step back and we started to architecture Katana to optimize for those two things: high sustainable real yield and deep sticky liquidity. And so taking a step back to answer your question, how many do I feel like can sustainably have thriving and robust ecosystems? I think from a general purpose standpoint, the number is pretty limited. But I think when you start to optimize your operations, focus, grants programs, and architecture towards a specific vertical, I think you can continue to get more and more niche. And I think that's where the new opportunity is. Focusing on one sector or industry, or even app, I would see Hyperliquid as an app chain that's expanding into more just like a DeFi focused chain. So yeah, I can't give you a specific number, but I think from a general purpose standpoint, it's small. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth in these sector specific L2s and chains that we're seeing.
I think you went into it a little bit there, but I wanted to ask, did you think this outcome was predictable, say 5 years ago, 3 years ago, or has something changed in the market on the way there?
That's a good question. I think in the crypto space and in the Ethereum space, we can, as a hive mind, we can go back and forth between this philosophic utopia and, then we can get snapped back into reality from time to time. Because there was definitely a point 3-4 years ago where, when all these L2s were spinning up and the narrative was, Ethereum at one point will support millions of layer 2s with specific use cases, et cetera, et cetera. And now I think we're shifting back to the other side a little bit, where we're saying, maybe you just need to maybe you don't need that many L2s, especially right now, and maybe we should focus on scaling the base chain, scaling Ethereum, which is now the narrative, right? I do think layer 2 still play an important role. I think there's definitely a narrative shift where people are saying that maybe L2s are not needed anymore. It's much smaller than what it might seem on crypto Twitter. There's also a narrative that started to creep up maybe in the past 2 years that said layer 2s are really just net extractive to Ethereum. And I can see part of that narrative, but also to say, I think that the way that Katana's architecture is set up, I think we actually might be the most Ethereum aligned layer 2 that exists currently. And there's a reason for that, and I'll just touch on it briefly. And that's we have this concept that we've worked with Polygon on called Vault Bridge, where assets in the bridge to Katana on Ethereum, those assets are deployed into low risk DeFi strategies on Ethereum. Because if you look at bridges from other chains, like there could be hundreds of millions of dollars in these bridges, and they're just sitting there on Ethereum doing nothing, just waiting for people to bridge back to Ethereum. We see that as capital inefficient. And when we work with vault curators on the vault bridge, we're not maximizing for the highest APY. We just want to earn just a little bit more. We just want to earn a little bit on top of what's already in the bridge. And then we take that yield and use it to boost the yield that DeFi users are getting on Katana, right? This also goes back to mercenary capital as well, where while we are providing the CAT token to boost APYs on Katana right now, we're also providing real yield, like more USDC, more USDT from Vault Bridge that's boosting that yield as well. So the idea is that we will rely on CAT token based emissions less and less over time, and it'll be replaced by actual revenues that's being generated by the chain via Vault Bridge and other mechanisms that we have. But to go back to how we're the most Ethereum aligned chain, assets in our bridge, those get deployed in Ethereum DeFi, which create deeper liquidity for Ethereum DeFi, provides more opportunities for growth. And it's really a unique way in which, as Katana's DeFi grows, so does Ethereum's DeFi at the same time. And we think that's a really unique alignment that you don't see on other layer 2s.
So how does a productive vault differ from traditional yield farming? And do you think people will follow in the footsteps?
We've started to see that. I mean, the market's a little weird right now, but what we're seeing too is, when we sit down with someone and we explain how Katana works and how, the yields that you're getting, the yields are stacked in a sense, where if you're deploying in a vault on Katana, depending on the vault, right? If you deploy in a vault on Katana, you're not only earning the yield that's generated from the native activity, you're also earning a nice little boost from Vault Bridge. You're also earning a nice little boost from Katana with the CAT token. And depending on the project, we Morpho is our core lending app. There can be a boost from Morpho tokens as well. So you could really, in the right vault, you could be getting a mix of like 4 or 5 different tokens that are helping to boost the yield there. It's a diversification of yield streams for the depositor, and it provides for a much more sticky liquidity, less mercenary liquidity environment for us. And there's another way in which we're working to combat mercenary liquidity as well, and that has to do with a concept we have called chain-owned liquidity. And that is a bucket of liquidity that is managed by the Katana Foundation that is deployed into DeFi. It is meant to be a permanent base layer of liquidity that stays deployed into DeFi to allow for confidence in our markets and more efficient execution, in bull, bear, or crab markets, which is kind of what we're sitting in right now. So, that's I think that's what I would say there. The second way that we are helping to combat the mercenary liquidity problem, and that the chain-owned liquidity comes from sequencer fees, right? If you're a layer 2, you batch transactions, you send them down to Ethereum for settlement, and then there's typically an excess fees that are in excess of that. We take those excess fees, net sequencer fees, and use that to grow our chain on liquidity. It's only around 400,000 right now, but it's continuing to grow every day. Every transaction that's submitted on the network helps to grow chain on liquidity. And that deployed chain on liquidity, right? It's deployed in DeFi, so it's earning yield. So it compounds as well. We would love to see chain on liquidity get into tens of millions of dollars someday in the future to support those core markets more as like a long-term vision and helping to, like I said, maintain confidence even in bear markets. When other capital leaves during volatility, chain on liquidity will stay there just to help provide a permanent base layer.
So now a bit of a broader question. What do you think is the biggest mistake DeFi founders are making at the moment?
It's tough to say because I think if you look back all the way back to DeFi summer, there was a point in which no matter what type of DeFi protocol you spun up as a founder or developer, it was going to have some sort of degree of success, right? Which is great for experimentation in the space. And I think we are a little too, I think some DeFi founders who've been in the space for a long time can be a little bit stuck in their ways, and they might be a little unable to adapt to what skate a little bit unable to skate to where the puck is going. I'm not saying that has happened with the projects I mentioned earlier, like Angle Protocol, Nifty Gateway, Zero Lend, Slingshot. I think all those are really great, solid teams. But I think, there's definitely a trend where in the past you could raise a lot of VC funds and kind of just try to find product market fit while you burn through your cash reserves. I think we're kind of at a time now where you have to find product market fit and generate revenue a lot quicker. So there's a little bit less time for mistakes, unfortunately. And that's just part of the market that we're in. When we get into another bull market, the term sheets from VCs will come back all over the place, and we'll see a beautiful revamp or in experimentation in the space. But one of the trends we're seeing is some sort of value accrual to token holders. You see that a lot, or revenue streams going to token holders, not just holders, but people who maybe are like staking and voting and providing some sort of service. I think Hyperliquid is a good example of that, again, with their buyback program. We've seen other buyback programs. We've seen programs where users can stake their token to vote in governance or provide some sort of backstop for liquidity in protocols, and then they earn revenues based on that. So we have an answer to that as well, where our CAT token, we believe in DeFi so deeply that our chain's token is a DeFi token. I don't know if you or your audience are that familiar with VE33 tokenomics, but it was something that was made popular by Curve, Solidly, Aerodrome, Velodrome. And it's really just been on the app level, the DeFi app level, and we're taking it chain wide. First time this has been done chain wide ever. And that is where we've talked about CAT token emissions going to specific DeFi pools to boost the APY. CAT holders can stake their CAT for a voting version of CAT, and then they get to vote where these CAT emissions are directed to, which DeFi markets get the boosted yield in the form of CAT tokens. And then they receive if you voted, you received a percentage of the revenue generated by the pool that you voted for. So it's a unique way. And so that there's an incentive there for VCAT voters to vote for the most profitable pools. And it's a way to get users a little bit more involved and to generate revenue from the benefit that they're providing to the Katana ecosystem. But all that to say, the mistake that founders are making right now is it can be hard to adapt to changes, especially if you've been around for a long time and I think it can be very difficult.
Yeah. So just to finish off, is there anything that our readers should know about whatever's coming up? Anything new? Things on the horizon?
For DeFi in general, or Katana, or
all of it? Yeah, we'll go DeFi and then we'll go to Katana.
Yeah, I'd say on the DeFi side, obviously prediction markets are a really exciting narrative. Getting a little heat right now. I think there's like some insider trading rumors or speculation or talk going on, which is a little disappointing and discouraging to the space. But I think in general, obviously prediction markets are here to stay, in my opinion. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation and iterations on that. And I think as we start to get more regulatory clarity on the prediction market space, that's where we're going to start to see a lot more investment and innovation come in as well. So pay attention to that. RWAs and stablecoins are obviously a very big thing. I think when people talk about like tokenizing real estate, I think that's quite a bit further off than what people actually think. I worked in banking for 13 years. Real estate, securitization or tokenization or loans. It's very complicated with a lot of hands that are involved.
How long off would you say?
Oh, I can't.
Decades?
I think there are some jurisdictions that are kind of providing a sandbox for real estate tokenization. So that kind of removes a lot of the red tape and allows these funds or projects to innovate a little bit more. But it's kind of just like I said, it's like in a sandbox. So
yeah, it
can be difficult. It's hard for me. Maybe not decades. I think if BlackRock decided, hey, we want to put real estate on chain, I think they would find a good way to do it, and they would find product market fit pretty quickly, right? So, and then I think the verticalization of L2s, focusing on specific niches or sectors, is a trend that is going to continue. Like I said, Polygon's doing incredible work on the payment side. It's amazing, very exciting as an alumni of Polygon to see that happening. And I think we're starting to see a lot of innovation in project tokenomics and how you can drive revenues and value to token holders or token voters. I think that's really exciting too. Something that I'm paying a lot of attention to just because it's interesting to me. And then on the Katana side,
yes, for sure,
we want to make things easy for DeFi users and people who are not as familiar with DeFi. So we're actually we're a blockchain that has our own app as well, app.katana.network. That's where we are surfacing earning opportunities, vaults. You can swap directly in the app. We have a what's called a questing section as well, where users can go in and complete DeFi related tasks to kind of get more familiar with DeFi and learn about the space. And soon our token will be live. And like those VE3 through Tokenomics I mentioned earlier, you will have the ability to take your cat, stake it, vote to which markets get emissions, and then earn fees from the pools that you voted for. And it's really exciting to see how all that's going to play out. So all of that is coming down the pipeline in the next 2 months or so. So we're very busy over here.
I love what you say about education. Do you feel like other blockchains are putting kind of the need for education at the front as much as they should be? Because that's what we all want, right? We want people to know, to be engaged.
Yeah, I think when you're in a bull market, it's a lot easier to find budget to focus on education.
Yeah.
We are trying to build it into our app directly to where we always kind of stay mission aligned with educating new users. But I wouldn't say they've fallen behind. I would just say it's tough. If you have a choice between spending money to bring on a new client or spending money to educate people who may or may not use your platform, I think you're going to spend money on bringing on a new project. That's just the nature of the market right now. There are a lot more resources now than there ever have been. I don't think they're well organized in a way that's really easy. But I think another thing too is I don't think users should have to learn about DeFi necessarily, right? I think, that's what we're trying to do with the app too. Right now, it's kind of focused a little bit more towards like crypto and DeFi natives, but we're moving more and more towards a place where it's just going to be easy for you to, like the cliche, like onboard your mom or grandma.
Of course, yeah.
But it's going to take some time, I think.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. A great conversation. And thank you again.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.